What if, in the Treaty of Tordesillas, the positions were reversed and Spain inherited the Old World, Portugal the New World and the Pacific Ocean? What if Spain got the blue and Portugal got the red? What would have changed? Is what I'm going to talk about. This is the Portuguese presence in the Muslim world around Arabia. First, let's talk about Ethiopia. So, there was a stalemate between the Ottomans and the Portuguese allied with the Ethiopians. Both of these being Mary worshipping heretics, by the way, they're not Christians, versus the cube worshippers. What happened was that the Portuguese arrived and they saved Ethiopia from annihilation. So my people, the Iberians, that's right, Portugal, I'm on your side this time. My people, the Iberians, saved Ethiopia from having to bow to a cube 5 times a day. So that's what Portugal did. However, Spain is a bigger country than Portugal. Where's a map of them? Spain is bigger than Portugal. How much bigger? 1, 2, 3. More than 3 times the size. Probably more than 4 times the size. Therefore, you can count 4 times the effect. So multiply this 4 times and you'll see how much Spain would have gotten of this part of the world. 4 times here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you get what I'm saying? So the entire Persian Gulf would be Spanish, and the entire Red Sea would be Spanish. So basically, Arabia would be isolated, besieged from all sides by the Spanish. Not just occasionally by the Portuguese, but always, because the Spanish would dominate everywhere around. And that would mean that Mecca would be destroyed, because the Spanish would have easy access to destroy it. And once you destroy Mecca, well, Islam would be in tatters. Of course, they would continue, but it would be like Judaism without the temple. It would have to change very much. So that's one of the things that would be different, is that Islam would be utterly humiliated by their loss of Mecca, most likely. And it's not far-fetched. The Spanish went around the world fighting Islam. That was the number one thing they were doing. In Mexico, there's a place called Matamoros, which means Moor slayer or kill Moors. Not because of their race, but because of their religion. So it wasn't racist. And so yeah, the Persian Gulf would be the Spanish Gulf, the Red Sea would be the Spanish Red Sea. That would be cool. And Ethiopia would be much bigger than today, because it would have a lot more help against Somalia, the Muslim Somalis and such. So it would be more expansive. It would probably take over Somalia, and Somalia would not exist if the Spanish took over. Or Ethiopia would be incorporated into the Spanish Empire's vassal or something like that. Anyway, now let's move on to another part of the world. Oh, and by the way, where was I? Oh yes, the Ottomans captured Aden in Yemen. So the Portuguese had a lot of trouble. Why? Because they're not as powerful as the Spanish. But if it were the Spanish, this probably would not have happened, and Yemen would be Spanish. So moving on. As you can see, the Portuguese were the first of the Western Europeans to take over places along the coast. Not all of them, so this is a bit exaggerated. They were not in every square foot of the coast, but they passed by everywhere. So if they were the Spanish, remember, make it 1, 2, 3, at least 4 times more. So 1, 2, 3, 4 times more inland, all over the place. So basically, all of this would be Spanish. South Africa, all the way to Central Africa would be Spanish probably, because the natives would not have the power to defeat the more advanced civilization. And at that time, there would be no competitors like France and Britain. They would come way too late. By that time, it would be like Latin America over here. Not just Equatorial Guinea, this little thing as today. India had a bunch of Portuguese things, but again, at least 4 times as much influence. That means India would have been taken over by Spain. And if India were taken over by Spain, that would be way better than what the British did. Because Hinduism is of the devil, it is satanic, and it involves human sacrifice. I think it's called sati, where the wife of a Hindu is killed, murdered, so she goes on to the next life to continue to be the wife of a man who goes to his next life, his incarnation or reincarnation. Not all Hindus do this, but some do. So there is human sacrifice in Hinduism by the Hindus who take their religion seriously. Most don't, though. So, and also there's cannibalism. The Agodi Hindus eat human flesh. As you know, in America, the Spanish abolished cannibalism and human sacrifice. Therefore, Hinduism would be abolished. The Portuguese did not do that. The Portuguese were too weak or incompetent, or they didn't even care. But the Spanish would have abolished Hinduism. Therefore, Hinduism would exist only in some places far away from India. Bali would have been conquered by Spain too. So yeah, maybe Hinduism would have been extirpated and no more caste system. The Spanish caste system was not based on race, it was based on wealth and proximity to the crown. Simón Bolívar, the idiot who helped make Latin Americans independent from Spain, and thereby weak, divided, and easy prey for the Anglos, as was his Masonic mission, with Masonic collaboration on all parts, in all sides, including the Spanish. He showed you that the Spanish were right to have that discriminatory caste system, because he was not born in Spain. He was less loyal by default. I was born in America, so I'm saying this without the bias of someone born in Spain. I'm like Simón Bolívar. I was born in America. Despite being Spanish, I was born here. But I understand if you're born in Spain, you're more likely to be loyal, and so that system was good for keeping people not rebellious and not likely to be bribed either. So it was not about that. It was not about racism. There were some racist Spaniards, of course. There's always racists, but officially no, and generally no. The Spanish believed everyone came from Adam and Eve. The racists are the Brits, who say subhuman blacks were a thing. And in my channel I proved them wrong. Anyway, see also my series, The British Empire was not the biggest. Idiots count deserts, but not oceans. Some of you have seen that series and heard me say this a lot, but some of you are new, so I want to say it in case you don't know, because it's important. Now, I'm running out of time, so let me hurry up. What was I saying? Let's see. Anyway, so Africa, most of Africa would be Spanish, and thereby all of Africa eventually, because if Spain had all this and all this, then taking Egypt would be pretty easy, when Spain would also have Arabia, which I've already covered. It probably would have. And so it would have parts of Persia besides Geshem, which it had during the Iberian Union in real history. And it would have India, extirpating Hinduism, crushing the headquarters of Islam. The world would be a better place if Spain took the old world. Anyway, let's see. So as far as Japan is concerned, I don't think there would be much of a difference, because Spain would not have... Actually yes. Actually, there would be a difference, come to think of it. Because Spain would have had so much of Africa and so much of India, its presence in Asia would be stronger. And therefore it would be able to bring more resources into China and beyond. And therefore eventually potentially conquer even a unified Japan. Even if Japan got guns, which it would have, as it did in real history, that wouldn't be enough because they would be outnumbered by the Spanish forces with their native allies, the Indian allies, and the Chinese allies. Even if Spain conquered only southern China. Yeah. So, but no, Spain was embroiled with Protestant wars, so it was busy here more than anything, and fighting the Ottoman Empire, saving Europe from Islam. Even though both sides were controlled by the Synagogue of Saints and using Templars and such. Today, Masons. So Spain was a victim of its own success, juggling too much. Now, moving on. Over here we have, let's consider what Portugal would get if it had America, the lion's share of America, instead of what Spain had. So if this were Spanish and this were Portuguese, what would have changed? Well, decrease this 4 times. So they would have had 4 times less and take far longer to reach this point of expansion in the same and that means that it would be easier for the British and the French to take over parts of America, in which case there wouldn't be 13 British colonies. They would begin with like 30 British colonies, and the French would have a lot more, including the South. Therefore, there would be far less Portuguese here by our time than there is Spanish by our time, because the Portuguese would not have been as spread out, and therefore much of what would have been theirs would have fallen into the hands of the racist British and the dastardly French. Now, these are the main trade routes, and so what happened with the African ultimatum when Britain stole all of Portugal's trade routes was that it took all of this green stuff here. So this became British. And the Dutch, of course, fought for that too, but they lost. So if this were Spanish instead, the British would have targeted these lands and these areas more, these seas more. Therefore, the British would take over America more and be negligible in the Old World, or far less important in the Old World. This would be like Latin America over here, and this would be like Australia over here and New Zealand. You know what I mean? What else can I talk about? Let's see here. This, by the way, is not all of the. This is not the peak of the Spanish Empire. The peak of the Spanish Empire is the Iberian Union, when Portugal was part of the Spanish Empire, and thereby all the dots on the coast that the Portuguese controlled, that was Spanish owned. The Spanish Emperor owned it. The capital was not in Lisbon, the capital was Madrid, because the union was not equal. The Spanish were the dominant party, and there were concessions given to the Portuguese. Give the dog a bone and he will be appeased. Let him think he's free, let him think he's equal, and he'll shut up. And that's what happened. But no, the Spanish emperor was in charge, and the Portuguese were itching to get rid of the Spanish because the Portuguese knew that they were they were the submissive party, not the dominant party, just like the Scots are in relation to the English, because they speak English, not Scottish Gaelic, and the capital is in England, not Scotland. They should secede, by the way. Have some self-respect. What else can I say? Well, I think that's pretty much it. Just no Hinduism. Islam would be without Mecca, and Africa would be speaking Spanish, not just this little area. And this would be more English and French. Yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. Adios.